some people. No. I'm gonna let you say that because I have been talking about this for years. I shared it with some council members. I've shared it with the city attorney, and it just goes nowhere. And I know that I have my own case, I think, the city suing me and stuff, which is evidence in my case. But I'm like, I don't understand when we were talking about that tape today. It was playing with Tim saying, you know, sometimes you hear things that people may need to be fired over. And I'm like, you know, honestly, I think code enforcement is better. But I think that the fact that this is a way in which he very deliberately targeted people,
No,
that's a
I'd like to
problem.
preview.
That's a problem.
Do like a
So
flashcard
I
thing.
have it. Can I share it with you? Or can I have my Google
All on my hand.
thing drive, and I can share it and you can just listen. I also have a transcript of it.
Okay.
I'll email it, so I'll do that.
Okay, great.
Because I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. But to me,
Yeah, I listen to it, give it my thoughts. Sure.
just got everything so neatly. Mess it up.
That was the one? You too slow? Too quick?
I'm going to be hanging out here for a few minutes. Prima might be running late.
As long as you can tell me when I screw up, you're welcome.
Oh, you're in trouble, Bob. You're in trouble.
You know, over the past 35 years, I've learned that if you bluff with confidence, it gets you a long way.
Right. She's running late. Yes, she is coming. She's just running late. Okay.
I can just wake up her.
Yeah.
Hold a seat in honor. He's like, whatever.
How far I gotta clean my neck?
His knees are in good shape. You can't touch the ground.
Huh?
That's not good.
My toes do.
It's a safety issue. Wait till I see Jackie. Pretty good. Oh, no.
Can you get through? Can leave a message?
Yeah, something's going on a little bit, but how nice it is to get all these young kids. She said, and she kind of stumbled.
Young at heart.
Well, yeah, it's also nice to have, I don't know.
Experience.
Yeah.
Age wisdom. That's a Canada clock, so.
Well, have a turn. Is Gavin called?
Is Gavin coming?
No, I have not heard anything from them.
You're at, stuck up,
You haven't heard
stuck
anything
in a
from them?
snowbank.
You haven't heard anything from them?
Must have texted ski on. Good evening. The Monday, February 12th, 2018 Common Council meeting is now in session. Our invocation is by Judith Feen, Vice President of Mission at St. Mary's College. Would you please rise? Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Holy One, known by many names and beyond all names. We meet this evening to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and the needs of both individuals and community. May our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom, as we seek respect for all persons. May our personal faith give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us. We pray this in the name of all that we hold sacred and holy, all that we hold good and right and true.
Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. If you would, please turn your cell phones to silent. Ms. Fowler, are you ready? Roll call.
Yes. Councilmember Preston,
Here.
Councilmember Broughton,
Here.
Dr. Varner,
Here.
Vice President Davis,
Present.
Councilmember Vorty,
Here.
Councilmember Furlick, I think he's excused, Councilmember White,
Present.
President Scott,
Present.
7 present.
Thank you. Subcommittee on Minutes, please.
To the Subcommittee on Minutes, the Common Council of the City of South Bend has approved and found them to be correct for January 22nd, 2018.
Is there a motion?
Motion to accept the subcommittee minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Special business. Ms. Fowler, would you please give reading to 1806, please?
1806, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend declaring the week of February 5th through 9th of 2018 as National School Counseling Week in South Bend, Indiana.
Thank you. Are there presenters?
Yes, President Scott, there are two presenters, myself, Karen L. White, Councilwoman at Large for the City of South Bend. My residence is 1912 Melbourne here in the City of South Bend.
Oliver Davis, 6th District Councilman. Residence is 1801 Nash Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46613. Glad to be here to present this resolution along with Councilwoman White.
And we're so happy to have with us representatives from IU South Bend, the best institution. And put that plug in. But again, we're so happy to have the Dean of the School of Education, along with faculty member, as well as a counselor that will be able to accept this recognition. At this time, Council Member Davis.
Thank you. Bill number 18-06, resolution number 4699-18. Whereas the National School Counseling Week, sponsored by the American School Counselor Association, ASCA, is celebrated from February 5 through 9, 2018, with this year's theme, School Counseling, helping students realize their potential, to focus public attention on the unique contribution of school counselors within U.S. school systems, and whereas the National School Counseling Week highlights the tremendous impact school counselors can have in helping students achieve school success and plan for a career. School counselors are employed in public and private schools to help students reach their full potential. And whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to their career awareness and development. School counselors help parents focus on ways to further the education, personal, and social growth of their children. And whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves. School counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society. Comprehensive development school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school.
Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed by the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, as follows. Section 1. On behalf of the citizens of the City of South Bend, Indiana, the South Bend Common Council publicly thanks and commends all of the school counselors employed in our public and private school systems for positively engaging with our youth, their parents, and fellow educators in helping to further and enhance the educational, personal, and social growth of students and youth across our great nation. Section 2, the South Bend Common Council hereby declares the week of February 5th through the 9th, 2018 as National School Counseling Week in South Bend, Indiana, and sincerely thanks all the school counselors for their many contributions aimed at the betterment of our youth, and especially thanks all school counselors working in the city of South Bend, Indiana for their dedication and service. Section 3, this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its adoption by the South Bend Common Council and approved by the mayor of the city of South Bend. We ask for your support at this time.
Thank you. Would anybody else would like to come and say a few words, please?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Dr. Yvonne Larrier. I'm an associate faculty, associate professor of counseling and human services. I'm also the chair of the counseling and human services department, where we prepare stellar counselors. Exhibit A. We prepare stellar counselors to go out into this world, into the Indiana South Bend area to work with our students and our children in many, many facets and settings. They not only work with children, they work with the parents, they work with teachers, anyone who needs help. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with some of the latest data on, or the statistics on mental health in the U.S. Just to give you a little glimpse of what is happening in our country, 1 in 5 children ages 13 to 18 have or will have a mental illness, a serious mental illness, such as depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder. We also know that 1 in 5 adults have a mental illness, serious mental illness. So if we were to look around the room, and we're not going to point fingers, but 1 in 5, there's at least, if there are 20 people here, there would be how many people with a mental illness, right? Some of it, 80% of that number, 80% will not get treatment. Will not get treatment because there is a treatment gap and also practitioner gaps. So we know that in the South Bend area, the South Bend schools do not have elementary school counselors. And it is incumbent on this city council to start looking into how we can further support our children, not only at the high school level, but starting from the elementary, even the pre-K. Because the behaviors that we see exhibited in the elementary, pre-K age groups, those end up continuing on. As the child grows, the behavior grows, the mental illness grows. And we see that resulting in homelessness. We see it in the juvenile justice system. We see it in the adult prisons. There's another statistic I want to read to you. 50% of all lifetime cases of mental illness begin by age 14, and 75 by age 24. In 10 years, the average delay between onset of symptoms and intervention is between 8 to 10 years. 37% of students with a mental health condition, age 14 and older, drop out of school, the highest dropout rate of any disability group, mental illness. 70% of youth in state and local juvenile justice systems have a mental illness. Mental illness is not just a school issue, it is a community issue. And we need to, as responsible stakeholders, we need to engage all facets of our community. If we're expecting to have wholeness, if we want our communities to be whole, we need to make sure that all stakeholders are fully engaged. And whatever we need to do to make that happen, the Counseling and Human Services Department, the School of Education, the IU South Bend community is here as a resource to provide whatever collaborative efforts, any type of support that we can give based on our expertise. We are willing to do that because our communities are suffering. And we know, again, 1 in 5 children, 1 in 5 adults. And when we add to that the opioid crisis that we have in this great state of Indiana, I think it is incumbent upon us to do something and not sit back and expect somebody else to do it. So I thank you. Thank you. Anybody else want to say anything?
I don't have facts and figures because...
Excuse me, Exhibit A, would you please state your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Exhibit B. I'm Hope Davis. I'm the interim dean of the School of Education at IU South Bend. And on behalf of the School of Education, I want to thank Dr. Laria and the council members for the work that they have done to bring this issue to the attention of the community, because there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And there are hundreds of children who benefit daily from the work of the counselors in our community, and so I'm just very appreciative of this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll gladly say a few things just because.
Name and address, please, for the record. Exhibit A.
My name is Lindsay London, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor that's practiced primarily in St. Joe County, but I grew up and had lived in Elkhart County. But because of IU South Bend and the Counseling and Human Services program, have just felt connected to this community and have practiced here, like I said, and decided to go back with my experience in the community and seeing these statistics that Dr. Laria spoke of, and decided the schools need people also who have a background in the community mental health part, and was able to be a part of her classes this semester and just continuing to learn all sorts of areas that our communities need people who understand what kind of impact mental health has in everything. Our schools, our churches, our community centers, our universities, everywhere, in our homes. We don't like to talk about it, like we said, we don't want to point out those 1 in 5, but there's plenty of us that suffer from those things, and if we bring it to the table, then it's not such a stigma. So thank you so much for letting us be here tonight.
Thank you. We'll turn it back to council for comment. Start with Mr. Vorty.
Gosh. I fully recognize the importance of what you're doing. I don't remember ever seeing a counselor. I don't know that we even had them way back when. And look at me. Those statistics kind of made me a little uncomfortable. But in any case, I congratulate you for what you're doing, and wish you the very best, and hope that others recognize and provide the resources for you to reach out to more and more people all the time. It's important. Thank you.
Dr. Warner?
Well, thank you for your efforts, and congratulations on the recognition. I think you made lots of people more aware. Statistics are always interesting to hear, and sometimes it's interesting to look at them a little bit deeper, and maybe we'll get a chance to look at that at some time. So thank you.
Joe Rhoda?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your work. It's critical. I appreciate you coming here tonight to share this additional information and do what we can in our capacity, but also to raise this issue beyond these four walls as we go out in the community as leaders, because really it's incumbent of all of us to treat mental health issues just as we treat physical issues. They're on the same par with me, and at every opportunity I try to communicate that, and as best as possible, we do have opportunities to lead if it's just our voice. or partnership or leveraging the work that you do. And always important, and with these resolutions, when we declare weeks to lift up issues, to celebrate the work that you do, I'd love to make a friendly amendment and make this a month-long issue, and to hold up your work and its critical need. So thank you very much.
I just want to thank you all, the council folks who brought this, but also the counselors who are here for your work. So much of what you're talking about, really hits home with me as a special educator who my area is students with emotional disabilities. So it really hits home. It tells me that it's great. I really appreciate you bringing it to the floor, bringing it to this place. And I challenge you to do more and charge us with doing more, like you said. I think I heard you say that, by bringing us a proposal. Talk to Karen White. She's the chair of the Personnel and Finance Committee. She's all about priority-based budgeting and participatory budgeting. Put a proposal together. I mean, I think that this kind of thing really needs legs. It needs teeth. It needs something that, and so whatever we can do, you're the experts. You have to kind of give us something to work with, whether it's, dollars allocated for existing programs or new innovative programs or increasing the number of counselors, social workers that are available to our students in schools. You know what's needed because you're in the field, you're on, in there every day. Come to us and let us know. And so I'm asking you to do that soon. So we can begin looking at, we're going to hear from our mayor a little later about what our priorities are, where we are now as a city. And we know that we have to address issues of violence. And a lot of the violence that we see, a lot of that depression and those things are underlying it. Councilwoman White is in the Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, really working a lot, along with other partners, on this synthetic marijuana issue. Our children are self-medicating because we have these issues of depression and mental illness. So it really, what you're talking about underlies so many of the issues that we have. It kind of goes deeper to the causes. And so I look forward to working with you on something very tangible that we can do as a council, as a community, to support our residents. Thank you.
Very encouraging.
Doctor, thank you, and your exhibits. As representatives of the whole counseling world, it is understated. It is, and not enough people know those statistics. I have a sister-in-law in the Houston public school area that actually caters her classing and her teaching based on counseling, and they format classes to those needs. And it's totally ashamed. I mean, I remember as a journalist in the 80s watching, state mental facilities, good and bad, go away. And working in the state of Maine, which had an excellent state mental program, it turns into larger issues. And what we do is we do not deal with mental issues that we have in front of us, but we turn them into criminal issues. And that's sorely missing, I hope. The mayor has influence nationally. That's something that can be discussed. So thank you so much for being here and being represented. With that, the formality is turned back to the public. Anybody from the public wishing to speak in favor, please come to the podium. Yes, sir. State your name and address.
Timothy Scott, live on it. Pete Buttigieg with office on the 14th floor of the building. Just want to echo on behalf of the city the importance of this role, both the policy issues that have been raised tonight as well as the work that school counselors do. And I want to thank the council for taking time to acknowledge them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against? We have to ask. Thank you. We'll turn it back to the council.
Move this resolution be adopted by acclamation.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. It passed.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you. Network. South. That's right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Souvenirs. Okay, thank you. Next is the Mayor's Annual Address to the Common Council on Finances and the General Condition of the City pursuant to Code Section 2-3.1 of the South Bend Municipal Code. Mayor, thank you for coming.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. And appreciate the opportunity. As you said, this is pursuant to an annual requirement. There will be an update on the finances and general conditions of the city given to the council by the mayor. I also view this as an opportunity to frame some of the things we'll begin developing roughly 1 month from now when we have the State of the City address, and any feedback or questions from council members that either come live tonight or in the next month based on some of what you've seen here will help inform the address so that we can write it to really speak to the things that are considered important. I also just want to take a moment to acknowledge Councilman Randy Kelly, who announced that he's leaving the council, to express my appreciation, the city's appreciation for the work that he did. The work of a city council member is often thankless, sometimes unglamorous, always important, and we really appreciate that work. And of course, we'll be closely following the process to identify someone to step into his shoes, because we've got such great momentum going on as a city that we're going to continue, of course, to rely on the council to be as strong as possible. So, that being said, let me begin with just some high-level numbers to give you the economic context that we're working in right now. And there will be, as always, a bit of a focus on the financial and economic dimensions of where we stand in my commentary tonight. We have seen about 700 jobs connected to the economic development work that's been done since the beginning of 2017, with about $200 million in private investment going along with that. If you look at the overall number of jobs in our city, we're up about 7,000 since 2012. So we have just a radically different set of issues, problems, and opportunities than we did just a few short years ago when we had that double-digit employment. We saw it actually get below 4% at one point in the non-seasonally adjusted numbers in the spring. Now we're hovering around 4%. We also see labor force participation pretty strong, although there still are concerns about people who are left out of the workforce altogether. And we want to remember that those are not counted in the unemployment rates. Continue to see estimates from the Census Bureau saying that city population is up. Again, these are just estimates until the 2020 census. By the way, we're very closely following the process for the 2020 census, because as a city that's right around the 100,000 threshold, a lot depends for us on making sure that every person is counted, and we'll continue to be playing a pretty active role in calling for the Census Bureau to get the resources they need to do a good job when they come to do that head count in 2020. You remember one of the big topics last year was that we were about to see dramatic growth in residential units, and we've now seen about half of that large number increased residential units coming online at places like LaSalle, Studebaker Lofts, and the former JMS building. We've got quite a few more in the pipeline. Of course, the former Chase Tower, Liberty Tower, across the street from us here, the Hibbard Building, Berlin Flats, so quite a lot still in process. And so far, indication that the market is absorbing those pretty quickly, especially the one-bedrooms. What we're hearing from developers, it's really those one-bedroom apartments that are flying off the shelves. And median income is up. This is a mixed story. Our per capita personal income is lower than most people might guess. Our poverty rate is high enough that I would qualify us as a low-income community. But we have seen that poverty rate decrease from 27.8% to 26.7%, so about 1.1 percentage points. It's actually a pretty big deal. That means that about 1,000 people have moved out of at least the federal technical classification of poverty, and it gives us, I think, something to build on in the years ahead. As you know, placemaking has been one of the key focus areas for 2017, and that will continue going into 2018 with a major investment in our parks, trails, and sidewalks. Largely thanks to the parks bond that the council authorized, which, as I'll elaborate in a moment, is going to impact literally every neighborhood in the city of South Bend. We've also worked to make sure that we are an employer of choice and to make sure that we are setting an example for employers in the area. And so with the support of the council, we were able not only to lift the lowest wage of city employees to $10.10 an hour, but as of January 1st this year, established a parental leave policy as well, which was funded in the budget. I have an update on that front. As of February 7th, 12 employees already have had a chance to take advantage of the parental leave program and been approved for time off sometime in the coming year. So we're really excited for them. The Homelessness Working Group, which convened last year, has seen the visibility of its work increase and just had an opportunity to visit the Fuse Center, that Housing First facility, which is working with some of the most challenging cases in the city. But already met people there who had been in the under the viaduct or otherwise sleeping outside, who are now indoors and that much closer to getting some of the resources that they need. We also have taken steps in terms of at least being able to measure our progress on diversity and inclusion, improving our recruitment strategies and improving our ability to keep track in a much more nuanced and sophisticated way than the EEO format, which is all we've had really to work off in the past, as well as just evaluating our diversity purchasing. Our diversity purchasing is not high. It's below 2%. And so we need to be very honest as a community about the fact that we are building off a base when it comes to the extent to which the businesses that we work with as a city reflect the community that we live in. But we have better tools than ever to actually watch that number, see what's going on, and reach out to give more people a chance to compete for city business. Again, in dollar terms, the biggest new thing going on is the MySB Parks and Trails Initiative. The bulk of that is going to go into the ground in the next 3 years. And so in this coming construction season, you'll see a lot of that happening. The flagship projects like the Charles Black Center should be completed by the end of this summer. And as you can see, there's a concentration on the area around the river, but really everywhere in the east, south, and certainly the west and northwest sides of the city are seeing a number of improvements that are either underway or coming up. And a reminder that this is really a creative funding stack put together by the Venues, Parks, and Arts team that relied on outside funds, including regional cities, the Kagan contribution, support from Notre Dame, fundraising, federal dollars, and other grants, on top of the TIF commitment that the council has authorized and the Parks bond. I led with the economic good news. I want to mention also with help from our diversity and inclusion team, we've been able to really zero in on some of the drivers of inequity in our city. And in particular, I want to draw our attention to this liquid asset poverty. So there's a lot of attention on income equality or inequality, but one of the things we've learned is that even where an income gap starts to close, an asset gap, in other words, the net worth of a household, the net savings of a household, are where some of the biggest gaps exist. Liquid asset poverty is a measure that's defined as basically not being able to cover 3 months' expenses. If you had a sudden shock, a job loss, a medical emergency, would you be able, with the savings that you have, to cover 3 months? And what we found is that African American households, about 2/3, are at that level of liquid asset poverty, and that every level in South Bend, every community in South Bend faces this at a pretty high level. So what are we doing about it? We have a new senior level position in the Department of Community Investment. for empowerment and engagement. That's Alkina Aldridge, who's no stranger to this chamber. Not to a great start, having convened a gathering with the Chicago Federal Reserve at the NNN, where we helped to dig into some of their research on the issue and apply it to our area. We are working on initiatives supporting affordable homeownership through our local partners, looking at ways to encourage and support entrepreneurship in disadvantaged communities, and supporting financial empowerment by engaging financial institutions to be part of the solution. Shifting now, I just want to follow up on a piece of good news that came from the state. We have been advocating for years for more state funding to go into roads. I want to give you a sense for what that means on the bottom line. Last year, we were able to pave about 31 travel miles, 31 lane miles in the city. That's it's really been closer to 20 in the past, so we're enthused about what we've been able to do. What you're seeing here also reflects a bit of good luck that I'm afraid has just run out, which is that we budget on the assumption that we'll have a pretty harsh winter. The last couple of years that was not true, which meant that there's real savings in salts during the wintertime and then pothole patching after the wintertime. It's reasonable to expect that's not going to hold this year, so we'll be evening back out there, and that will hit the bottom line. But we're hoping that we will have resources to do more than we've been able to do in the past with paving. There's an additional $100,000 in paving material for the city crews, another $600,000 for outsourced paving in the 2018 budget, and that means 40% more, so roughly 8 more lane miles than our baseline. And we've also got some really compelling new resources for condition analysis. There's even a device with an iPhone that can be mounted to the dashboard of the vehicle that can give a more objective rating of the condition of roads where the cracks are developing, rather than having somebody go out with a clipboard and eyeball it, which can sometimes get you less consistent results. We're also looking at a major increase in road drainage funding to cover some issues that we've discovered. So that'll be up from $50,000 last year to $450,000 this year. The Light Up South Bend initiative, led by council members, has now touched just about every quadrant of the city. There was a bit of a slowdown because of AEP's inability to do some of the installations. We understand that has to do with some resources being pulled for hurricane recovery and relief, but we'll be partnering with them to make sure that we can clear that backlog as much as possible for the 2017 plans, as well as looking forward. Our crews are also increasingly replacing city lights with LED lamps. It's a big savings in terms of the power that it uses, and you can expect to see more of those in the coming years. TIF expenditure is just an overview of the overall levels that have been going in. The River West area continues to be our largest for TIF resources. River East saw $10 million, and the South Side about $4.5 million. I do want to emphasize that more than half of TIF dollars are going into public infrastructure. So we're talking about things that benefit a neighborhood or the community as a whole, like roads or corridor improvements, streetscapes, public facilities, or planning for the future. And about 40%, the balance of that, is going into more of the project-specific initiatives that tend to command headlines. And again, just want to give a sense of how this really has touched every part of the city. If you look, I know it's a little bit tiny to try to look at, but you just go down the list and you'll see truly every part of the city has experienced some kind of benefit, at least within the TIF areas where we're able to deploy those funds. Again, the River West here, River East, and then that South Side development area. I always consider this a good time of year to review what our city workforce is doing. The vast majority are in public safety or public works. Parks and Rec, I don't want this to be misleading, there's obviously a much bigger number of seasonal employees in the Parks and Rec department, but in terms of full-time staff, it's just under 100. Then you have general government, which include everything from legal and human rights to city clerk and the mayor's office, community investment, and then, I'm sorry, mayor and city clerk are under other. That's right, we're in the other category there, as are the council, I believe. The overall trend, certainly not one of an increase. If you roll back to 2012, we were at 1,133 full-time employees. Now we're at 1,115, and that's budgeted. Just with the ordinary churn of employees, we're almost always going to be below the budgeted number. So you'll actually see it a little closer to the 2017 numbers. Some of the things that have changed. By the year's end, we were down some employees from retirements and departures, but also So we're down 6, but up 9. From new positions, you remember we brought on historic preservation, that's 2 personnel, 1 in admin, finance, 2 in public safety, building inspector, innovation, public works, and code enforcement accounted for the other 3. This will leap up if we proceed as planned with Century Center employees being realigned. So I just want to emphasize, again, it's largely a change on paper. This is city supported, but it'll reflect our head count when they are transferred back to being city employees rather than contract personnel, if that's the direction that the council authorizes. I want to zero in for a moment on healthcare. For any employer, this is one of the biggest and fastest growing sources of cost. And again, we've budgeted very conservatively, just based on what you would normally do with the projections for an $18 million total healthcare bill for city employees in 2018. That being said, we now have enough time under our belt with the near-site health clinic for city employees that we can certainly regard it as a success. Health insurance costs overall in the last 15 years have gone up by 56%, and yet healthcare costs, even when you factor in the cost of running the clinic, we're actually down 7% in 2017 over the prior year. So benchmark, you would expect just in general in the market about a 12% year-on-year increase. I'm not saying that we're going to see decreases every year, but we're certainly bucking that trend, which is great news, and so we'll continue to watch very closely. The other side of the coin is that just nationally, healthcare costs continue to be on the rise. And one thing that's worth noting is that even though in 2017 versus 2013, we actually had fewer employees, the healthcare costs were trending up. So it's a mixed result, but certainly very encouraging in terms of it being the right thing to do to have that clinic up. I don't want to read you this spreadsheet here. Again, the bottom line is by law we're balancing the general fund, what we call the general plus fund. So general fund, COED and EDIT. You're going to see a pretty high net funding if you look at the 2017 actual number there. 34, effectively it reads as a $34 million surplus, but part of what you're seeing there has to do with bond funds being brought in. So in coming years, you may see the reverse be the case. You see us spending out more than was coming in because we'll be spending down some of those bond balances. But our cash reserves are very strong. This is one of the reasons we have such a good bond rating, which I'll brag on in a minute, as I love to do every year during this address. You'll see these kinds of ups and downs. That's just based on month to month when the cash comes in from the property tax receipts twice a year. But bottom line, our reserve requirement is that blue line, and you'll see that at the end of any given year, we're consistently above that and continue to have very healthy cash and the flexibility that goes with that, which is going to be important as we continue to face uncertainty in 2020. I also want to emphasize that we've seen local option income tax revenues rising. We got a real gift in 2017 when we saw a 20% leap. That didn't happen this year. We're at a 3% increase, but it's still encouraging. It's one way that economic growth is benefiting the city's bottom line. It's also worth mentioning, just because I think most people don't know this, the local option income tax rate here is 1.75%. In Elkhart, it's 2.0%. So we're 1/4% lower than our neighbors in Elkhart County, and still able to, at that rate, to really benefit from having a local option income tax. For budgeting purposes, we assume a 2% increase. There's some years, especially if you have a recession, where that'll actually go down. But we think on average, we'll be prudent to plan on 2%, a little conservatively, and then whenever it comes in above that 2%, so much the better. So we just got reaffirmed on our AA bond rating. Again, this is something that really reflects well on the fiscal discipline of the administration and our predecessors and the council. Fishers has a AAA bond rating. That's to their credit. There are only 4 municipalities that we found in our scan that have the AA level comparable to ours. And what's notable is that the other 3 are socioeconomically pretty wealthy suburbs of Indianapolis. And so it's all the more remarkable that a city with our level of income has been able to maintain that, and it will be something in the back of our mind anytime that we're making fiscal decisions how we keep it. In terms of what it actually means, it allowed us to get a 3% rate on the most recent parks bond, and so over time this can translate into often six-figure, even $1 million savings for taxpayers. Okay, I got two charts layered on each other here. The blue is just the level of assessed value in our community. The red, and again, I'm sorry the font's a bit small, but this is the zero line, so the red is the trend. Anytime it's above the zero line, my green dot's dying here, but so in a year like 2016, certainly 2014, that would be a year when net AV actually went down. And then in the last few years, you can see it's growing at a rate of about 2%. We do have some concerns about this. If you look at AV, how little the assessed valuation of our community has grown on paper between 2010 and 2018, we're just a little skeptical that that really reflects economic growth. You would have to believe that the overall value of real estate in our community hasn't budged since 2010. And so we're continuing to communicate and work with the assessor's office to make sure that anything that's making it more complicated. There's obviously a lot of complexity in assessments. There may be some noise in the numbers, but of course this really translates to real dollars and cents for us as a city. And we want to make sure that the kind of economic growth that we know that we're experiencing, just like you see it on the income tax receipts, you want to see it, or you would expect to see it reflected in our land values and therefore in our property tax receipts. This was an interesting analysis we had done that basically is a per acre analysis of land value. You would generally expect land value to be pretty similar on adjoining areas, so you would expect maybe an area where the sticks, so to speak, are higher to be clustered, and where it's lower to be clustered as well. We are seeing some spikiness in there again, and that's one of the things that's driving our dialogue with the Lee County Assessor's Office to try to get to the bottom of some of those. Also, just a reminder that when you have dense development, you have dramatically higher tax value per acre. I know that sometimes there's been an envy of places with a lot of big box stores. They certainly have value, but even the most modest downtown establishment, if it's part of a mixed-use development with, say, 3 stories or more, is likely to have a much higher per acre tax value when we think about how we fund as a community the plowing and paving and patrolling and everything you do to support every square foot of land in the city. There's also often commentary about how much of our land is taxable, so I just thought it was useful to see this. When you get to actual land mass, people think about the university, but of course that's outside the city limits. Hospitals and city-owned property are accounting for a substantial amount of non-taxable land, the gray area. The other thing you see, of course, is the airport, which is just a lot of land there. And so that's, of course, tax exempt for public use, and that's one of the reasons that you'll see the shares, what they are in terms of how much of our land is on the tax rolls. So overall property tax collections, again, we are seeing some increase in net AV, 2.2% from 2015 to 16. We're hoping that'll grow and perhaps accelerate. We did see property tax receipts a little bit lower than we budgeted by about 0.5%, but the Parks and Recreation Fund was higher than the previous year by 12%. So it sounds like this has to do with how the DLGF, the state, sets the parks levy, and if that continues, we may want to recalibrate how we relate the general fund to the parks fund, but should be good overall. I do want to mention that one thing that drove TIF receipts down quite a bit was a refund due to Meijer, and that was a store that insisted, pursuant to a state law, that a store that was open and serving customers be taxed the same as an empty abandoned store. We have a lot of concerns about that policy. I know it's been taken up from time to time in the state legislature. I would point out that some stores in our community take advantage of that tax loophole, and some do not. And so it's something to think about in terms of our community's relationship to the different retailers that we rely on to pay their fair share. Here's the annual reminder about the so-called fiscal curb. Our latest estimates are a $2.4 million reduction. This is outside of TIP, so this is your Civil City numbers from the expiration of the 0.5% kicker that we get on the property tax caps. So if you added in TIF, that would be another $3.8 million reduced. But of course, that's a lot easier to absorb because they're not relying on it for operations the way we do the general fund. But as of now, that number to be is 2.44 million. Which brings me to our expectation for deficits. Part of this is budget conservatism. So when I showed you this last year, it would have projected a deficit looking forward to. When we actually get to the actuals and the budget we're actually living in, we always find a way to bring it together. But in a business as usual scenario where you're dealing with increased healthcare costs, increased pressure on finances, more costs for streets, curbs, and sidewalks, because even though we're grateful for the gas tax adjustment, it's not actually enough to get us fully caught up on streets and sidewalks. As well as a possible drain on some of the funds we use for EMS operations, because that's based on Medicaid reimbursements, and Medicaid is obviously not quite as secure going forward as we might have wanted to assume. The result is that if nothing changed, we'd be at a $10 million deficit in 2021. So how do we make sure that we're not just doing business as usual? Do my best not to read this to you, but here are some of the main measures that are underway already in the 2018 budget to stay ahead of this fiscal curve. And in dialogue with the council leading to the October vote on the 2019 budget, we'll need to double down on these and identify more. First, we talked about healthcare. So anything we can do to make sure that escalating healthcare costs don't harm our bottom line. Second, working on PSAP. So I have a lot more confidence than I had 6 months ago in the trajectory of the PSAP, but still something we've got to watch very closely to make sure that the costs don't run away. I know this has been a concern for council members as well. But we're starting to see a much more consistent flow of information, including financial information, on the 911 center, and we think it's clearer now how we're going to get that into a pattern where it's not going to become terribly, you're not going to see a terrible acceleration of costs. Third, I've harped on it a little bit already, but just making sure that we're in good shape with assessed valuations. Not so much making sure that they systematically go higher, just making sure that we have the right level of accuracy, knowing that if somebody is overtaxed, they're likely to appeal, and if somebody's undertaxed, they're likely to keep that to themselves. Fourth, I want to mention that we're integrating our purchasing department. So right now there's about 100 people in the city who have some kind of purchasing authority. And one of the first things any business looks at when they're trying to make sure that they're maximizing their dollars is that we have as integrated as possible view on purchasing, so that whenever you can get a volume discount, you take advantage. Whenever we learn that the city's getting a better deal from a certain vendor, we take advantage. And so we're currently in the process of getting to where we'll have, by the end of this year, we hope about 20, 25 dedicated agents. We actually think we can get the number below that, but that's a good target for the end of the year, and we think it'll yield savings. Similarly, when it comes to facilities, we really want to move in the direction, I can't promise we'll have this all worked out by the end of the year, but we really want to move in a direction where the maintenance of city-owned buildings has a common view, a common asset management, again, the way a lot of enterprises would work, so that you can consolidate contracts, you can save time and money. If one area has a peak and another has a trough in terms of the demands on it, you can reallocate resources, and we think there'll be savings there. So that we can eventually truly have an integrated buildings management. And so we'll spend 2018 continuing to deliver on the key initiatives that were authorized in the budget for this year: inclusive economic growth, placemaking, as you see with our Parks and Trails investments, supporting neighborhoods, making sure they're safe, walkable, and livable. There is this outstanding question of the quiet zones, and we're working to get a price tag assigned to that. It won't be trivial. But there's certainly a lot of interest in making sure that if one part of the city is able to enjoy some peace and quiet when they live near trains, that other sides of the city get the same. Safety, which I think will get even more attention this year as we try to respond to the impact of the nationwide uptick in violent crime, while deploying some of the new tactics we have, like the street outreach workers that are already working to break cycles of violence in our neighborhoods. making sure we make good on our commitment to diversity and inclusion, addressing the issue of lead, making sure we go into the spring and summer with more solutions than we had before for homelessness, supporting early childhood education, and expanding access to treatment on substance use and overdose issues. Everything I just went through will be posted by tomorrow online, and of course we're always available at any time to answer any questions that the public and council members may have, but also happy, I don't know if you want to just take questions down in writing or if we should do some right now.
We do a couple, like 2 efficient questions per council member, starting with Ms. Preston.
I just want to thank you. I'm seeing so much here in these key initiatives and priorities that I think council members and the community has been asking for over the last few years, and I really think you're listening and acting, not just listening. So thank you for that. No questions.
Thank you. Joe Broden.
I exceeded my questions last time.
No, Joe, do you?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
What's that?
That's very honorable. Thank you, Joe.
With regards to the increased funding, which we now recognize coming from the local road and street funds, the increase in the gasoline tax, as we look at areas and percentages of paving that we did in the past, I think this extra couple $1 million that's going to amount to should get a substantial portion committed to neighborhoods, as opposed to more of the thoroughfares, which seem to consistently get the bulk of the attention. I know it's been said, it's been recognized that there are some streets that haven't seen any paving for 50 years, and we always lament we don't have enough funds, but now we have this ongoing increase in revenue, which will be at least $2 million a year. And I think we need to up the game with regards to neighborhoods, because nobody wants to live on a street that hasn't been paved in 50 years. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President Davis?
Yes. Could you enjoyed the report? Could you share what could we do to help reward? You talked about the box stores, and there are those who like buyers. We did that, but have you thought about? And this goes along even with our health insurance too. What kind of continued rewards that we can give to box stores that are not utilizing that tax loop? And same thing, the rewards for continued rewards for those of us who to use the plant for employees, continued rewards that. So the reward question. Second thing is the infrastructure budget came out today from the federal government, and it's calling upon a lot more funds from state and local issues. How do you think that's going to potentially impact us here? So I would like to get your thoughts on those 2 things.
Thank you.
And the infrastructure.
I'll try to have a better assessment of infrastructure plan when we have a little more time. The mayors are communicating with each other about what's come out, and obviously we're getting our first look at it. Our initial sense is that their plan for infrastructure is basically that we pay for it. So we're looking at any new leverage that this might open up, but it's certainly not. It's not what I would describe as a major infusion of new no strings attached free capital. Not that we expected anything like that to really be possible. So we'll continue to look at anything we can do to partner with the federal government on infrastructure, but it seems like this plan largely relies on state and local governments, as you said, to do the heavy lifting. Love the point about acknowledging box stores who aren't taking advantage of that tax loophole, and appreciate the spirit of the carrot rather than the stick, especially if maybe there's a company that's thinking about doing it. Maybe that would be a great time to thank them for not doing it.
That's my whole thing.
And reward good behavior. Maybe one thing we can do is we can work with the auditor and assessor's office to compile a list of stores that, at least to our knowledge, haven't asserted that, and find some way to recognize them. I think that's a terrific idea. For clinic use, definitely something that we'll look at ways to acknowledge employees who make use of it. I will say a lot of employees have been rewarded just in terms of good health outcomes. There's at least one coworker I have who Credits Clinic will save you life. So some great stories coming out of there, and continue to look at good things. And of course, also the wellness program means that city employees get a benefit in terms of the cost that they face for health insurance if they take certain steps, one of which is a requirement to visit the clinic once a year for an annual checkup.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
John Bordy?
Yeah, first of all, just congratulate you and the team you've put together that is doing such a good job. In my second roundup here, I was pretty skeptical about decision-based or database decision-making, and thought more in terms of hands-on. And it seems like the more I know, the more I find out about things, the more I lend my own personal endorsement and credibility to the things that you're doing. And along with that, I think you're getting a hang of it. Seem to be doing a better job every year, or at least I'm beginning to appreciate the job you're doing every year. I don't know. But anyway, keep up the good work. I look forward to working with you and your team on the 2019 budget.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that, and also appreciate your doing what I should have done at the outset, which is acknowledge the team that prepared the numbers and has done the bulk of the hard work. They really have made us proud and allow me to look good through their diligence. So a big thanks, especially to Jen and the admin and finance team.
Ms. White?
I would just like to thank you, Mayor, and the administration for our 2018 budget. It was a long process, but we got there. I'm just thrilled to see the commitment towards our neighborhoods and the different initiatives that reach beyond just government. And as it's been stated that, we're the city of South Bend, but it takes a whole village to really address a lot of issues that are not uncommon to a city our size. So I look forward to the 2019 budget. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I am. And really look forward to ensuring that we continue down the path to address our neighborhoods and to assure that the services and the needs that they have, that we can do the very best that we can with the resources that we can, and to really sit down with various individuals and neighborhood associations to make sure that we're hearing their needs and that we can do the very best. I would encourage you in the administration to really share the 2018 budget in terms of those initiatives that really impacts. I'm not saying the other work that we do is important, but I think that when you talk to our citizens, they're looking at those basic services, Light of South Bend, curbs and sidewalks, and all the initiatives that are coming out of community investment. So we can highlight that and keep telling that story. I think that it will serve us well. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Since Joe Broad was so humble in giving up her questions, we're going to allow her to ask one.
I'm a renege. Just one, I'm sorry.
Point of order.
Yeah. With the issues of poverty that you've addressed and focusing on the liquid asset, and I know there's been some discussion, but I just want to share, I think, a priority for myself, and I know that I've heard from folks both sides, is pathways for people to go from rental to actual housing ownership. And when we look at, assets that individuals have, I think there's just an inordinate amount of money in our community that is going toward rentals, and it's not ownership. It's not building up the wealth. So it's just a high percentage. So I think if we can, make sure we're keeping that in the conversations for 2019, how to move people toward that home ownership, that American dream, that brings them stability, and contributes to, the neighborhood in terms of, just on so many levels, participation, the house itself, and just the quality of life. So.
Thanks. Yeah, great point. It's something that community investments are responding to. The very clear guidance from council to focus on that. So look for more there going forward on how we can support people building those assets, especially because we live in an economy just in our region where it's often much more expensive to rent a property than it would be to finance the ownership of the same property. if people can get access to financing.
Right.
So that's a big part of what we have to crack is how we can get more people that access to the ability to finance homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, just a couple quick points. Same thing that Ms. Brogan was talking about, the LAP, that's very interesting to me. And that asset base, I'm glad we're actually looking at that. That's going beyond what we've all discussed about looking into the neighborhoods and that data-driven. The interesting thing about that, and we'll be talking to you soon, I know Karen White and I, Community Investment, have had conversations about not only that, but going back to the vacant abandoned task force that we sat on, of how do we keep people from sliding, where those assets, they don't lose those assets, where we look at repair, we look at different things, and I think with Dr. Mueller, we've started that conversation. We'll have more details towards that. So that is truly very interesting that you guys are looking at that data. I like your initiatives and your goals at the very end. I looked at those. There's 10 there. There's 9 council members, and I think each one has touched council members. I'll take credit for 2. I'll sign up for 2. That's lead initiative, which affects the 1st district and the 2nd district, and also the quiet zones. I know Oliver Davis interested in homeless. There's infrastructure issues where Dr. Varner, in neighborhoods where Karen White and so many other council members. So I'm challenging council members too to be involved with the city as a working partner on some of those things that truly come forth, because we know we're out there meeting with individuals to help maybe drive some of those messages home, and work on some of those things. So much more to come. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your administration as well.
Thank you.
So, all right. Thank you, sir. Now, we will continue with the rest of the scheduled program. Right now, I'd like to entertain a motion to suspend the rules to allow 3 readings at tonight for 1811 and 11:18 and 12:18.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Palmer to help with this. So we need another motion to hear these for the first time?
Correct.
And that has to be unanimous.
And by roll call vote.
So can I entertain a motion to hear these 1811 for the first time?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, by roll call, we need a vote.
Am I going to read the first reading right now? I should read it now. Okay. 11:18, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending...
Hang on, Freeman. Do we hear the motion first?
We hear the motion before,
Before
Okay.
the reading. Okay, so the motion has been to allow for the first reading.
And we need a roll call vote
Okay.
on that.
Councilmember Preston?
Here, aye, yes.
Got it. Councilmember Broden?
Aye.
Councilmember Varner?
Aye.
Vice President Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Vorty?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
President Scott?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. Now we have first reading.
11-18, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending ordinance number 10499-17 and ordinance number 100529-17 relating to the appropriations of tax rates for the year beginning January 1st, 2018 and ending December 31st, 2018 to correct a scrivener's error.
So a motion to hear this second reading in the committee of the whole.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Do we need roll call? Or
No.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Now do I entertain a motion to hear first reading on 12:18?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Fowler, roll call, please.
Councilmember Broden?
Aye.
Councilmember Varner?
Aye.
Vice President Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Vorty?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Preston?
Aye.
President Scott?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. Ms. Fowler, would you read 1218?
1218, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 2, Article 14 of the South Bend Municipal Code to establish a new fund, Park Bond Debt Service Fund, number 312.
Is there a motion to hear this in committee of the whole?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Point of order. Do we need any motion to hear a third reading at the third reading time? No, we just send it to, all right. Okay.
Sends it to the council.
Don't we need a motion, though, for purposes of public hearing to combine both of those?
When we get to it. We'll do that with the committee as a whole.
We're to the committee part, so we're good.
All right.
All right. Okay, moving on. Report from city offices. I think we just had a big one from the mayor. So Susanna Fritzberger is here representing the city. Thank you for coming. Entertain a motion to rise to the committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Turn it over to Vice President Davis to run committee of the whole.
Committee of the Whole is now in session. Committee of the Whole is a time when we take the time to discuss and review and to vote on the bills that we heard earlier in committee this afternoon. We will hear a discussion from the presenter, and then we will ask for our comments, and then we will then hear a public hearing. You will be able to stand and speak in favor or against each of these bills. At this time, we'd like for our clerk to read our first one, which will be Bill number 8917, which we need to have a substitute.
8917, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 21 of the South Bend Municipal Code, Article 3, Commercial Mixed-Use Districts to revise permitted uses and development standards.
Motion to accept the substitute version.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is carried. Now, we will have our presenter. Before we have that, we have a committee report. That is me. We bring this to you with a favorable recommendation from the Zoning and Annexation Committee, which met earlier today. Now, Ms. Angela Smith.
Good evening, Angela Smith from the Area Planning Commission. Office is located on the 11th floor of this building. Before you is a text amendment to repeal and replace the MU mixed-use zoning district in the zoning ordinance. There were several changes that were made, and due to the length of changes and the amount, we decided it was easier to repeal and replace the chapter than develop a long ordinance to replace these. In general, what this ordinance is looking to do is realign the mixed-use district with the goals and intents of South Bend. When the zoning ordinance was adopted in 2004, this was pretty much modeled after an Indianapolis ordinance that was in place at the time. Over the last 13, 14 years, we've discovered that in many ways this district has not worked in the South Bend area. There's been a large number of variances from everything from setback to parking, which we addressed earlier this year, for legal non-conforming buildings, just to continue to operate the way they are. So the Department of Community Investment worked together with the Building Department and others to draft an ordinance that looks at what would be an appropriate alignment of a pedestrian-oriented district. You have a chart that was distributed that gives the full outline of all the changes. I won't go through all those now. I'd be happy to answer any questions on them, but I will let you know this came from the Plan Commission with a favorable recommendation updating the MU mixed-use district to better reflect the intent and application of the pedestrian-oriented district within the urban context will simplify development and strengthen the mixed-use neighborhood centers. Mr. DeVita is here to help present some of those changes and give more insight into the change.
Thank you. Let's hear Mr. DeVita, and then we ask questions afterwards if necessary.
Good evening, Michael DeVita with the Department of Community Investment, offices on the 14th floor of this building. So here is a series of changes are proposed to the existing MU district to promote walkable mixed-use development in neighborhood centers through a more straightforward code. The distribution of MU zones is shown on the screen, so they tend to be along the city's major corridors and on the fringe of downtown. As with the other text amendments recently approved, these changes will reduce provisions that hold back investment, will decrease the number of rezoning, special exception, and variance requests that must be made but tend to always get approved. So the proposed amendments will allow property owners to more fully utilize their properties by revising setbacks, will reduce the number of legal non-conforming properties, and will clarify a few ambiguous provisions found within the existing code. These ordinance changes would allow buildings to be built in a manner more consistent with traditional design, to better blend with the existing neighborhood, to produce better design outcomes in urban contexts, and add to the vibrancy of business districts. I then would ask for your adoption of this text amendment, and as Angela mentioned, we've covered this several times before, and the summary has been provided, but we'd be happy to take any questions you might have on specific provisions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. DeVito and Ms. Smith at this time? Seeing on this side?
Just a comment of thanks versus a question. Missed saying that in the committee, but your office, planners, and the Area Plan Commission staff have done a lot of work on this, and I want to be remiss at saying and just commending you for the hard work in drafting it from both departments. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Vorty.
Yeah, one quick question. There was at least one reason we continued this was that there was a concern, whether it was legitimate or not, that some developers might have a problem with this. Have you heard from anyone, potential investor, developer, who thinks that this is not a good thing?
Maybe Angela will add to it, but from what I've seen, just general, at least from what we've talked to, enthusiasm about it in the big picture, makes development easier, but still consistent with what we've seen.
Yeah, good. That was one of the purposes of it. Yeah.
I was just going to say, in my interaction with developers, I've spoken with 3 different developers and shared these revisions that are coming. One in particular that works with small business owners along Western Avenue was extremely excited to see the changes that were in place and said that this will help spur a lot of development that he's had to kind of discourage over the last couple of years because of the standards we had. And then a couple other projects that are in the pipeline, one of which you'll see next month, where these assisted in their development of the project.
Good, great, thanks.
Thank you. President Scott.
Anything to make business friendly, I think, is a good idea. I think these were long time coming. And you know, the new urbanism that is sweeping our town and the nation. I think this goes a long way. How less often will you be before us? Just rough idea. What do you think?
Probably not so much less than before you, but I think the Area Board of Zoning Appeals will see a great reduction from this, some of these changes. A lot of times when they're going for a rezoning, to make a individual go through additional variances for an existing building is just redundant, and it makes us feel like we're not really serving them when we're asking them to continue to pay for variances and ask for variances of conditions that are up and down a block. And so this is going to go a long way in being more friendly to the neighborhood's existing conditions.
Yeah, and I think it lends to the fact that people think it's just confusing government red tape versus what needs to be done. So, not that we don't want to see you, just less.
I was going to ask, but I was going to go there right now.
So, all right, thank you.
One last question. Could you comment on the ADA compliance issue? We hear that a lot. For the record, could you talk about that, please?
Yeah, there's a provision in there saying that or if there's seating or outdoor displays of merchandise, that the placement can't block access or be in conflict with ADA standards. Of course, federal law would always trump any local ordinance, but just put it in there as far as the exclusive.
Thank you, Sir Kyle.
Question?
Yes, one last question. Yeah.
Sorry. So how would this be advertised or made known to the developing community? And I'm specifically thinking your department hosted an event at the public library trying to cultivate small developers, doing small projects, 2, 3 story, whatever. And a lot of folks were looking at these corridors as, places that are vacant that we want to fill. So how do we disseminate these changes in a way that's effective and meaningful? What's the marketing plan, I guess?
Yep, I think it's a good question. And I should have pointed out earlier, too, that probably the primary beneficiary of these changes tend to be those, call them small-scale developers,
right,
but
exactly.
they're probably not developers in the way you normally think of the developer. they're more really the business owner who buys the building next door to expand or
Right.
do a different business. Kind of people who maybe will do one or two of these projects in a lifetime. So I think in terms of putting out the word, we certainly reach out to those groups who participated in that workshop. Also disseminate through the Area Planning Commission website. That's where I guess most of the inquiries come from, and especially probably sharing with some of the engineers who commonly work through these provisions, that they understand what those are. That'll come pretty quick. And given the sort of the nature of who's undertaking these projects, they tend to be people who come and ask those questions
Right.
anyway, so we're interfacing with them through that manner.
Councilwoman Preston had a question.
You asked it for me. Thank you so much.
I did?
You did.
I appreciate it.
Efficient.
Thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful. Now, at this time, we turn it over to the public. Those who'd like to speak in favor of this bill, please come forth to share your name and your thoughts. Seeing none, those who'd like to speak in opposition, please do likewise. Public hearing is now closed for comments and then vote. Any other comments necessary? This way? This way?
Make
Then-
a motion to send the substitute 8917 full council favorably.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. It is carried. Okay, that moves forward. We now move to bill number 06-18. Mr. Fowler.
06-18, public hearing on an ordinance to vacate the following described property. Street vacation, Western Avenue from Francis Street East, 241 feet, to Prairie Street, to the first north-south alley east of Francis between Western Avenue on the north, to the first east-west alley of Southwestern Avenue, South Bend, Indiana.
Okay, thank you. We have a committee report.
The Public Works and Property Vacation Committee met earlier today. For lack of a quorum, we were not able to send a recommendation to council. We did, though, however, have a pretty thorough review of what was proposed or petitioned.
Okay, thank you. If you have our presenter, just state your name and address, and then go ahead and share. And I see a person, you can go right after. You go first, and then you go second.
Good evening, Council. Jeff Ballard with Dan Charner Associates, with offices in South Bend at 1643 Commerce Drive. I'm here representing Robert Henry Corporation and their offices on Francis Street, as they ask for approval of a street and alley vacation, more particularly Western Avenue from Francis Street east 241 feet, plus or minus to Perry Street. Then the first alley north, south alley east of Francis Street, between Western Avenue on the north, to the first east-west alley south of Western Avenue. The reason for this request is to allow the future development for the Robert Henry Corporation, which owns the properties surrounding the vacations, excluding the two properties on the southeast portion of the north-south alley. This did go before the Board of Public Works. All departments reviewed the request. Planning Commission, Community Investment, Fire Department, Engineering, all came back with a favorable recommendation for this vacation. If you have any answering questions, I also have Stephen Henry with me here, President of Robert Henry Corporation, who could also shed some light if there are any questions that you may have.
Okay, Mr. Henry, you would like to just share some opening comments before we have questions?
My name is Steve Henry with the Robert Henry Corporation. My office is at 404 South Francis Street. It really isn't to develop the property. It's really a safety issue. We have no less than 20 to 30 cars flowing from Western, turning off at Eddy Street, flowing what would normally be Western Avenue, which has now been closed off by this street because they decided that's where the city sewers need to go. And if you look at the property line, with key mark 186006, 16402, that's our property, and they go flying through there every day. And I've got trucks in there unloading. We're trying to plow the snow out of there right now. And if I put a gate at the other end, I can prevent people from going through there. Right now, there's a gate there, but I haven't closed it when the city engineer notified me that that was not vacated yet. So the Board of Public Works actually asked me to vacate the alley and Western Avenue to Perry Street. It's the safest thing to do. And the properties on Perry Street that back up to that alley, we've given them an easement, a continuous easement, and we've already recorded it, and they have a copy of it. So if they sell their property, they can know that that property is there. Really, there's only one lot there that has a garage. The other lots don't have a garage, but that doesn't mean that somebody someday couldn't do it. People coming down Perry Street wanting to access themselves to Francis Street have the ability to go through other alleys that wasn't curbed off or blocked off when the city did their sewer work that was there. It's really just a safety issue. It allows me to take a few more fences down and make things a little more accessible for ourselves, but it's really a safety issue.
Okay, thank you. Starting on my right, any questions for any one of our presenters there on this side?
Appreciate the cross-access agreement that you've effectuated with the neighbors. That's important. I think that'd be great as a council if we can actually have those in our packets, if those have been worked out in advance. But thank you for sharing that earlier today in committee. That's not on you as the presenter. That's just a packet piece of information that would be helpful.
Okay. You said you can email that?
I can email it.
We received them.
Oh, you received
earlier
that.
between
Okay.
committee.
Okay, fine. Okay.
I'll get one to you if you want.
No, I'm a piece. I was
But
just
thank you,
following
though.
what you just said. Okay.
Thank you for
good?
reaching out to the neighbors to do that.
Okay.
Does there need to be any signage put up there?
Well, on the gate that I'm going to put up, it says road closed. There's already a sign at Eddy Street. If you turn on to Western Avenue, there's already a sign that says not a through.
That's what I was thinking.
There's already a sign there.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's really only about 4 or 5 neighbors that utilize that road. The people that are on the east side of Perry Street are actually commercial property, and every one of those are for sale. So they're not really, there's no access, there's no driveways going into those.
I didn't get a chance to get over there lately anyway, and I can't recall the alleys that you would be directing that little bit of traffic to. Are they paved by any chance? No.
They're not even plowed. Actually, they are plowed because I think we plow them.
Yeah.
I think Mary Bundy was put on Facebook tonight. She was very appreciative of us plowing some roads today because Francis Street by itself on both sides, the plows go through there during the day. I mean, both the construction workers of the people building the house and our employees get there at 6 o'clock in the morning, so plows don't go through there unless they go through at night. Now, I will say that we've relocated a large portion of our overhead crews that work for AP to the south end of town, Elmhurst District.
Yeah. All right.
That's it. Thanks.
We have peace? Okay, cool.
Thank you.
All righty. This time we open up the discussion to the public. Those who would like to speak in favor, please come forth, share your name and your thoughts. Those who would like to speak in opposition, please do likewise. Come on.
Good evening. My name is Pat Kennedy. I'm the owner of Lee Insurance Group. My company is at the corner of Western and Eddy Street. Our office has been there since 1975, and Western Street has been an east-west thoroughfare for that entire period of time, up until this past summer when a gate was put up. I inquired initially about the gate, was told that it was being closed by someone that was putting up signage, that it was being closed as part of the work that was being done at the other end having to do with the Howard Park Redevelopment District. I never could confirm whether that was the case or not. I rise in opposition to this for a couple different reasons. We have a very unique situation there because Western Street, for all intent purposes, became a street, but is an unincorporated street. That property actually is all owned from Eddy Street East, Eddy Street West, all the way to Francis, by now 3 individual owners, which include myself, my neighbor to the west, and Robert Henry Corporation. So basically what we've got is a situation where the street being closed from Perry west is going to allow utilization of their piece of property for their usages. And I certainly appreciate the safety issue because now I have all the people turning around in my parking lot that would have been flowing through to Francis Street. There's also the issue that it has left the residents of Perry Street with circumstance of no way out onto Eddy Street, other than no way out of their neighborhood other than going out onto Eddy Street or through an alley. And a lot of those people did make the left-hand turn, go to Francis Street, and exit the area that way. It was heavily used by my staff. We get out of our office at 5 o'clock and try to go north on Eddy Street is taking your life in your own hands at 5 o'clock, 5:15. So our staff struggles to leave our property in the evening. My position on this, in all candor, is you need to look at the surveys of the property, the diagrams of the property on who actually own those parcels. I own 151 feet plus minus of that section of Western Street, and if the road is to be closed, my position would be that the entire road from Eddy west to Francis should be closed. My true position, though, is it should remain open and possibly be rerouted away from Robert Henry's building in order to provide safety for their employees, but also to put the street further to the north, away from their building versus right up next to their building, because I do identify with his concerns. We have it as well. So that's my 2 cents worth on the topic.
Okay. Any others? You can have a seat right there. Any others would like to add some words of opposition? Seeing none, we would like for the 2 presenters to come back and to address the concerns that their neighbors shared, to discuss ways that they can come to some resolution that they can recommend to us so we can have some peace with this matter. 5 minutes.
As the consultant, I'll just say a couple things that I think the best course of action in this case would be to, for that particular owner, to get with the South Bend Engineering Department and work through those circulation issues with them, as they have looked at the vacation and approved it and checked circulation and checked the way people move through that neighborhood to Eddy Street and south on Perry and then over to Francis. Might seem like a minor inconvenience, but it's still safer than going out on Eddy. So there's still alternate routes for people to move safely in throughout that neighborhood. But I would suggest that those property owners, that Western Avenue remains on their property, that they work with city engineering to have them maybe explain their theory and their thoughts why they approved this further. That might help ease that situation.
Okay. Mr. Henry, would you like to have any words on that?
I'm glad to talk with the lead agency, but Western Avenue is already closed. I didn't do it, the city did. I own 18606. It's already, I mean, if they're going through there right now, they're going through there at 5 o'clock on private property already. So, I mean, I didn't close this street. It was closed by the city when they redid the Francis Street. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's already closed. All I'm doing is doing a formality that the city, the Public Works Department asked me to do.
Gotcha. Is there...
I mean, I'll be glad to talk to them.
No, I understand. Come up, please. Now, just for the... You have to have a seat. Thank you. I'm just trying to see behind you. There's nobody there. So there's nobody else here from Public Works that can add any more light to this discussion? Can I make a recommendation just for the city, when there's an issue on this agenda, could we have a representative from their department that could be and stay here until that bill is completely heard? And so,
I can speak on Public Works.
I understand, but come on, you can think.
I'll just share a couple of things when we did the rezoning of.
Name and address, please, sir.
James Mueller, Executive Director of Community Investment, 14th floor of this building. A couple months ago, we did the rezoning of the 0281 parcel.
That's correct.
And I think you and some others had kind of toured the site, and so did we in Community Investment. And as Mr. Henry has stated, when we redid the street on St. Francis, the curb cut was placed up on his private property. The other thing we noticed is, why are the parcels so messed up here? They're very irregular. This used to be a railroad line, I was told, that was abandoned, and so this is a whole mess. This is not how we like city roads. This is not how we like anything. This is a mess, and as we said, we've kind of already closed off the road. And so fixing this would require doing something with someone's private property. So the only way we could actually fix this is either you could extend Perry north to Quimby, or as you go farther north, then you're basically just east-west thoroughfare close to another one. And so that's not ideal either. So this is an unfortunate situation. It's a mess. Everyone, engineering, Board of Public Works, planning, thinks this is the best solution that we have to an unfortunate situation.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes, go. You still have your time.
Western Avenue.
Come closer, please. So we can hear you.
Western Avenue itself is, if he looks at his deed, he already owns 10 feet of Western Avenue. The Western Avenue, the right-of-way is only 20 feet wide. It's an unincorporated street. The property that is, if you look at where the N and the A and the N in E, N of those two properties there, they own 10 feet of that property. That right-of-way is only 20 feet wide. It's really not a two-lane road.
I got you.
And that abuts to your property, to
Correct.
your building, correct?
Well, yeah, our property. Like I said, Western Avenue got closed off when they redid the city, so we're parking on Western Avenue now because there's no place, nobody could go through there.
Gotcha. Ms. White has a question.
It was mentioned that this is a mess, and I agree that it is. And as we begin to look at Mr. Henry, and if I heard you correctly, you made mention that you were asked to bring this before us, but also looking at the other resident, how can we, as a city, address what he's been asked to bring forth and to deal through some of these issues, and to see how can we begin to look at ways in which we can really try to make something out of this mess, if it's possible.
Sure.
And this goes to the administration more so than you, Mr. Henry.
I'll say there's a couple options.
Okay.
I mean, they would all involve acquiring property that's currently owned by private owners. We have talked to Mr. Henry at various times about potentially relocating. That would certainly be, he owns a lot of the property in that neighborhood, which would open up a lot of potential solutions if we were to do that. So those talks are ongoing, but we see that as a potential benefit.
Had you,
Question from Ms. Preston, and then Councilman Vorty, then Dr. Varner, and then President Scott. All hands went up. Ms. Preston.
just kind of a continuation, just more specific on the Councilwoman White's question. Did you consider, as one of your options when you were looking at that, closing the entire from Eddy to Francis as the person who spoke against had suggested? Was that something that was a consideration, and you chose not to do that?
That would be, then you would be closing off access to a lot of, there are residences on the west side of Perry Street, that street there, and then the businesses on the east side of that street. So you'd be blocking off access to a lot of property owners. if you did
So you
sell
considered
to
it, but thought that that was not a good option.
Well, that would cause a lot of adverse impacts, so, right.
Okay. Councilman Vorty.
In the short term, if in fact there's any volume of traffic directed toward the alley, maybe you could, make sure it's maintained or hard surfaced or something like that. That would be relatively inexpensive, I would think.
The hard surface, see where the blue line is?
Yep.
It's hard surface from that alley forward. I'd be happy to at least stone it and make it easier for transfer from there to Perry Street.
I mean, the city's got plenty of recycled asphalt and slag and things like that make a fine hard surface for alleys.
Right. I mean, it hasn't been maintained by us. Frankly, we're the only ones using it, but I mean, if they're going to use it as an access, and Perry Street people want to use it. Most Perry Street people go out. I mean, I see the neighbors every day when I go out from work. They're coming home from work, and I wave at them, and they say hi. I can't say that. Hey.
Gotcha. Dr. Vernon.
No, I thought that I'd heard Mr. Kennedy say, ask the city to, as an option, to at least close the rest of it. Then we had the discussion that you can't close because it will affect Perry. So there probably isn't any way to resolve it satisfactorily for everybody.
The alleyway where the blue line is there, we own both sides of that property. We made an agreement when we did have that alley vacated that it would be left open, not built upon. Want to get together with them, and he wants to help us take care of that alleyway, the rest of that little bit of alleyway, that's 70, 80 feet of that. I'd be glad to work with him. I'd be glad to work with the city.
So that's for clarification, the 0283, the alleyway south of there. So the blue line extended east.
Yes, 0283 is the property south. That alleyway there. That's the only parcel that's not paved. Grass grows in it. It doesn't get used all that often by anybody, but I mean, like I say, it wouldn't take much to put some slag in there and dress it up, keep it maintained.
Okay. Dr. President, Scott.
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
You ready to make the motion? Okay. Y'all gentlemen can have a seat. Your time is over, sir. I think we tried to take your consideration. Okay, go for it.
I agree with the guy from Lee Insurance. Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody. To me, this is step one, and I think the city should start looking at more improvements. But I make a motion to send the substitute bill, 0618 to the full council favorable.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Pardon me? All those who like to oppose say nay. Okay, no nays. Okay, it is carried and moves forward.
Councilmember Davis, I would like
Yes.
to add though, if administration can get with, and what was your name again? I'm sorry.
Kennedy.
Your name?
Pat Kennedy.
Or Mr. Kennedy, and also with the owner of most of the property over here in the city, to try to kind of address some of these issues as well as we possibly can. I would hope that you'll be able to do that. I see that, the Director of Community Investment has done so, and maybe get back with us in about 3 weeks to give us an update on the status of those level of discussions.
Okay, so at our next zoning meeting, can you give us an update regarding what you met with Mr. Kennedy about, and just give us a brief update regarding that? Okay? We all at peace, and we move forward to our next bill. Bill number 1118.
Motion. Now, for purposes of public hearing, could we consider both 11 and 1218 together?
All in favor would like to hear.
So moved.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We will now hear Bill 1118 and 1218 together for the purpose of public hearing and vote on them separately.
1118, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending ordinance number 10499-17 and ordinance number 1052917 relating to appropriations and tax rates for the year beginning in January 1st, 2018 and ending December 31st of 2018 to correct a Scrivener's error. 1218, public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 2, Article 14 of the South Bend Municipal Code to establish a new park fund, Park Bond Debt Service Fund number 312.
The Personnel and Finance Committee heard both of these bills, and we sent it to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Okay. We now hear from Ms. Jennifer.
Good evening, Council. Jennifer Hockenhull, City Controller, offices on the 12th floor of this building. The bill before you is simply to correct a technical reporting error for the Parks Bond levy. Originally, when we had prepared the budget, we had prepared the Parks Bond and the Hall of Fame bond as one debt levies, debt service payment, and now we are just breaking it into two separate funds, the Hall of Fame Bond Fund 313, and now this new fund, as stated in the second bill, for a new Parks Bond Fund for fund number 312. It's all net dollars, no new dollars being requested here.
Okay, we've heard her report. Any questions at this time from council? Dr. Varner.
None of this will affect any rates.
Correct.
None of this will affect any other questions at this time? Seeing none, we're now ready for public hearing. Those who like to speak in favor, please come forward. Those who like to speak in opposition, please do likewise. Seeing neither, then we close the public hearing and we come back for either comments or to vote on 1118.
I'd like to make a motion that we send 1118 to the full council with favorable recommendation.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. We will go for it favorably. Now, what's your pleasure on 1218?
Make a motion to send 1218 to the full council favorably.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. That would also go before it's both passed, and make a motion to close the committee of the whole and pass this over to our president. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There we go.
Thank you.
I did not rise, I just said it, so that's okay.
Full council's now back in session. Ms. Fowler, would you please give reading to 8917?
Third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 21 of the South Bend Municipal Code, Article 3, Commercial/Mixed-Use Districts to revise permitted uses and development standards.
Motion to amend as was in committee of the whole.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Ms. Fowler, roll call.
Councilmember Varner?
No.
Motion for pass.
Motion for passage as amended.
Second.
Ms. Fowler.
Councilmember Varner?
We say all in favor say aye.
Didn't have the ayes, we had the motion in a second.
All in favor say aye for the motion.
No, we
You
made a
did?
That was
motion
just
and accepted the sub
We have to have a vote.
for us to vote on the full amended version. So it's roll
Stand
call.
corrected.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. Go forward with the reading.
Councilmember Varner?
Aye.
Vice President Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Vorty?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Preston?
Aye.
Councilmember Broughton?
Aye.
President Scott?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. 0618.
0618, third reading on an ordinance to vacate the following described property. Street vacation, Western Avenue from Francis Street East, 241 feet to Prairie Street, the first north-south alley east of Francis Street between Western Avenue on the north to the first east-west alley south of Western Avenue, South Bend, Indiana.
Move for the passage of 618.
Second.
Ms. Fowler, roll call.
Vice President Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Vorty.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Preston.
Aye.
Councilmember Broden.
Aye.
Councilmember Varner.
Aye.
President Scott.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. 1118, please.
1118, third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending ordinance number 10499-17 and ordinance number 10529-17 relating to appropriations and tax rates for the year beginning in January 2018, and ending December 31st of 2018 to correct a scrivener's error.
Move with the passage of 1118.
Second.
Ms. Fowler?
Councilmember Vorty.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Preston.
Aye.
Councilmember Broden.
Aye.
Councilmember Varner.
Aye.
Vice President Davis.
Aye.
President Scott.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. 1218, please.
1218, third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending Chapter 2, Article 14 of the South Bend Municipal Code to establish a new park fund, Park Bond Debt Service Fund, number 312.
Move for passage.
Second.
Ms. Fowler?
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Preston.
Aye.
Councilmember Broden.
Aye.
Councilmember Varner.
Aye.
Vice President Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Vorty.
Aye.
President Scott.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Thank you. Resolutions 1805, please.
1805, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, waiving a non-compliance by petitioner James A. Masters and Nancy J. Masters with the Indiana Code 6-1.1-12.1-5.
Is there a committee report, Ms. Preston?
Yes, the Community Investment Committee met and brings this to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Presenter?
Mr. President, members of the council, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It is my pleasure to speak here to you tonight on behalf of one of my most favorite people in the world, my wife.
And your name and address for the record, sir.
James A. Masters, 5015 Masthead Court, South Bend, Indiana. A year ago, January 2017, my wife and I built a new home in the city limits in the farthest northwest corner of the city. In fact, our backyard comes to the city-county line, and we are like 3/4 of a mile from the Michigan border. So whenever you see the weather forecast and it talks about the storms in Berrien County, they hit right there. And so one of the attractions to build in the villas at Lake Blackthorn in that subdivision is some number of years ago, I believe it was November 2013, the council passed a resolution granting a 5-year tax abatement for properties built there. And I will tell you that's an incentive to build in the city as opposed to going 500 feet across the street and building outside the city in a very comparable subdivision with the same developer that's not located in the city limits. And so this past, I think, November, when I was getting ready to file all the new forms you have to file for a new house, homestead exemption, mortgage exemption, I submitted the application for the tax abatement application. And the county auditor bounced it back and said it was filed late. And pointed out that it's required to be filed within 30 days of when the assessor sends you the Form 11 notice of reassessment. Now, the problem is that the assessor's Form 11 notice of reassessment doesn't comply with state law, because state law requires that notice to tell you that you have to file the abatement application within 30 days, because it's unlike every other application you file. Now, this must happen often enough because the General Assembly has also empowered the city to relieve me from that deadline and to allow the late filing of the application. And so that's what I'm here for you tonight to ask, is if you'll allow it to be late filed so that it applies for the tax year assessment 2017 payable this year in 2018. And we did this early enough so that it doesn't affect the taxes because the tax bills haven't even been prepared. So I'd ask your approval of our petition. On behalf of my lovely wife, if not for me.
Okay, thank you. Council members, any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. We'll open up to the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor, please come to the podium. Anyone speaking against, please come to the podium. Seeing none, turn it back to council.
Move for the adoption of 1805.
Second.
Ms. Fowler?
Councilmember Preston?
Aye.
Councilmember Broden?
Aye.
Councilmember Varner?
Aye.
Vice President Davis?
On behalf of Mrs. Masters, aye.
Councilmember Vorty?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
President Scott?
Welcome to the First District, you and your wife. Aye.
Thank
Thank
Good
you.
night.
First readings, Ms. Fowler, 0718.
0718, first reading on an ordinance to vacate the following described property. The right-of-way to be vacated begins at a point approximately 565 South on South Street, St. Joseph Street, from the East Island Road south right-of-way, running south approximately 75 feet, when west approximately 88 feet, then north approximately 109 feet, to a point approximately 530 South Long, South Street, South St. Joseph Street, from the East Ireland Road south right-of-way. Jeez, we gotta fix that.
I move that this be sent to the Public Works and Property Vacation Committee and set for second reading and public hearing on February 26th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. 0818, please.
0818, first reading on an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance for property generally located at northwest and northeast corners of Western and William and the southeast west corner of Wayne and William, Councilmanic District Number 2 in the city of South Bend, Indiana.
I move this be sent to the Area Plan Commission for their meeting on March 20th, or is it February 20th? March 20th, and sent to the Zoning and Annexation Committee, and set for second reading and public hearing on March 26th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. 0918.
0918, first reading on an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance and seeking a special exception for property located at the east side of Oliver Street between Calvert Street and Delaware Street, Councilmanic District Number 6 in the city of South Bend, Indiana.
I move this be sent to the Area Plan Commission for their meeting on March 20th, sent to the Zoning and Annexation Committee, and set for second reading and public hearing on March 26th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. 1018, please.
1018, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending ordinance number 10546-17 by adding new salaried and wage positions to the ordinance, fixing maximum salaries and wages of the appointed officers and non-bargaining employees of the City of South Bend for calendar year 2018.
I make a motion that this be sent to Personnel and Finance and set for the second reading committee meeting on February 26th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Unfinished business, 1803.
1803, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals for property located at 915 27th Street.
Make a motion to send this to ABZA for 214 and ZNA for 226.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. 1804.
1804, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals for property located at 2602 Mishawaka Avenue.
I move that this be sent to the Area Board of Zoning Appeals for their meeting on February 14th, and sent to the Zoning and Annexation Committee, and set for second reading and public hearing on February 26th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Any new business? Joe, you want to give a
Yes.
30-second update?
Sure. 3 key points from today's Solid Waste Management District meeting. One is we did vote to put out the recycling component for bid versus a 10-year continuation of the current vendor with a 5-year out. And I thank council members who weighed in on that decision. I appreciate your input. Second piece, actually 2 and 3, is the board approved the recycling annual fee for $28, and a second component of the fee was to cover the HHW, the household hazardous waste. And that fee was revised down from 12 from what you had reviewed to 11. That passed with 2 votes in opposition, I believe. And I was on the losing end of that vote. So going forward, with regard to the contract, we'll be looking at trying to get a work group to evaluate it, but more importantly, a weighted scorecard to evaluate the bids that are coming in. And I'll keep you posted on both of those items relative to looking at newer, for just a new vendor for 2018. All this is subsequent because the contract for recycling expires at the end of this year. And then with regard to the fees for the HHW, I think we've done a considerable amount of work trying to identify and appropriately assign fees for the curbside. Still yet to be done, in my opinion, and one other member of the board is assessing actually spreading out the cost for the household hazardous waste across everyone in the county who benefits from that program, not just those who participate in the curbside program. So looking for additional input as we go forward and trying to find a reduction and a shared cost, if you would, across all members of the county with regard to those who benefit either by use or by not having these hazardous chemicals, tires, you name it, the hazardous stuff dumped in alleyways, dumped on vacant properties, or dumped in our water sources.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe that there's going to be a new location for the household hazardous waste.
It already exists.
Okay, since Mr. Karat's still here, could we restate that and get that out?
Sure, it is on,
very hard to find.
I'm sorry, it is on Kerr Street, just south of Western. I can get the address before we leave tonight, I'm sorry. Don't want to find it real.
Yeah, I think if we could get that out,
yeah.
It's
yeah,
going to be much more convenient, more centrally located.
Exactly. And I guess going forward, Mishawaka, the city of Mishawaka is contemplating continuing to offer curbside services, but or not curbside, I'm sorry, household hazardous waste drop-off and a possible satellite relationship with the district. So what was formerly at 5th Street, City of Mishawaka is looking at trying to keep that in place. So that will be part of these ongoing conversations in trying to come up with funding that will actually support and sustain what I consider a very needed program, and that is the household hazardous waste. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
828 Kerr Street, South Bend, Indiana. So just south of West Sample.
Yeah.
Be the first block, first street to the south.
It's right off the southwest corner of Prairie or Sample and Chape.
Right.
In the
And that was voted on, and it's a considerable cost savings to have established that and to move things over. But as I said, there's some ongoing questions about how to resolve the HHW fee.
Thank you for that 30-second update.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good info. Mr. Davis.
No, just I would recommend, if we already haven't already put it in process, that at our next council meeting, that we do a proclamation and invite former council member Kelly to come, and we honor him for his years of service. So he can come like we do and customary for us to do.
Okay.
So I would just want us to do that at the next meeting.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll turn to the privilege of the floor.
And could the clerk office be responsible for reaching, or you or somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm a piece.
Privilege of the floor. Individuals wish to address the council must state their name and their residential address. Individuals will be limited to 3 minutes only. Dr. Varner will time. You can give a 30-second exit.
Clerks, can you get to what we have?
The maximum time limit for this portion is 30 minutes. Individual may address only issues with the city has jurisdiction. Individuals shall not be permitted to address topics that council had heard on the previous agenda. Council President may assign topics raised to individuals privileged to the floor. If you would, go ahead, state your name and address.
Rod Goodchild, City Hall. No, Rod Goodchild, not Councilman Goodchild. No, that's not right either. It's 837 South 24th Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46615. And yes, just a comment, I have been getting calls and calls and calls, and I just tell the people, I'm running to set the American record straight. 529 is the record, and that's what I'll win when I take that 70 at Greensboro, North Carolina, in July, in the World Games in Toronto for the Olympics in August of 2020. And yes, I'll be singing as I won Masters Gold in the Commonwealth Games at 418. Anyways, coming here, you know we got the 16 carvings done. You got a picture of the welcome sign, and you say, how tall is that? It's 40 feet. And you say, well, if I go out west, I think that it's 1,000 a foot. I'm trying to do the math here, and you're telling me you got an average of 30 feet per tree. Comes out to a couple grand less than $500 million. My father came from the Potawatomi Nation. Menominee is the tribe. It's just like South Bend is part of Indiana. You're still part of Indiana. And he came here, as Tom Brokaw said, 1946, from a reservation that when I was 5, we had no running water. We had a bowl that I pumped like Zig Ziglar to bring in so we could eat. My mom said, Bob, those ants are as big as my hand, finger. You can't let Rod stay here. But I experienced what it was on the reservation. I'm very passionate about the reservation. I come here today because the flag means everything to my dad. I see you have 4 flags. I see when Mayor saw me at IU when he was with Ernestine, and he said, commented about my question to him. He said, it's got to be business and art. And I'm saying those 14 trees bring David Leiter, Buchanan superintendent. He saw them. It's on my Facebook. Any of you can look. He says, you got unbelievable what this means to our city. You can increase the radius of where buses come.
30 seconds, Rob.
Every year, 50%. If I told the mayor or Aaron Perry, how could we increase the city of South Bend size by 50%? Interactive park. Every tree begins to relate to every child, and it's there. It's there, we have it, and we're doing it with an app. The children interact, they interact with the schools. That would increase it by the percentage of the schools coming from Michigan just to come to our park.
Roger,
it's something to think about. Thank you for the flag.
Thank
They all
you.
said to come to you. You can figure it out like you did with those 2 men here. 4 flags over Niles. We need the 4 flags over Potawatomi. City,
Thank you.
state,
Mr.
USA,
Guttow.
Potawatomi Nation, Potawatomi Park. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak at privilege of the floor? Entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Huh?
Are these new?
Yeah, commissions we got.
Yeah.
Everybody's appointed until we're reassigned. We got applications in on some where that deadline's coming up soon. But yeah, we'll do that. And committees are up to our chair. We got
I just like the status. Janice, make it set up.
People hang out.
No one has.
Hey, I have a question. Media doesn't get to come into the executive session.
No,
do they?
I'm just.
No, I'm just asking. Oh,
giving
no, I'm
the
just
public-
asking. It's okay. I just wanted them to.
I'm just giving this information as public record.
Hey, Jen, did you provide us a...
No, nobody came in. They met me afterwards.
Oh.
In terms of bills, or vacancies, whatever, or do you know off the top of your head?
North Carolina.
I gotta make sure I have everything to get to.
Did I hear you say you were a candidate for the 3rd District Council?
Everybody's been calling me for one. I says, no, I'm running. They said, are you running? And I said, no, I'm running to the City of American.
I thought you promised me you would never.
I never will. No. That's what I told everybody. I said, are you running? And I said, yes, I'm running. I'm running. I'm down in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.